Hi, it's Mike here. So this video is about DNA. DNA is complex digitally coded information. And life is something far beyond just ordinary chemistry. Chemistry is just not enough to start life. Why? Well, let's think deeply just how sophisticated DNA really is. Why is chemistry just not enough? Well, when people talk about origin of life, they use soft language. They say life came from chemicals, or given enough time, millions of years, simple molecules became cells. But that language hides the real problem. Life isn't just chemistry. Rust is chemistry. Fire is chemistry. A puddle of amino acids is chemistry. A crystal is chemistry, but none of those things are alive. Life is something far beyond ordinary chemistry. So we have DNA, four-letter code, ATGC, far more complex than the binary code. Life is chemistry, and it's organized by the information that the DNA gives out. So the binary code, used in all our computer systems, it's based on noughts and ones, and we know it's in our laptops, it's in our phones, it's in our TVs, it's in everything. But we humans, we program the binary code. But the core problem of life is the hardware versus the software. So you can think of the hardware of DNA as our body, you know, versus the software. So ATGC, that's the software in our bodies that makes it work. It's with the DNA code. And inside every one of our cells, every one of our cells, there is a digital coded system. And DNA stores the information, RNA carries it, ribosomes read it, bio machines build the life and all the parts. This isn't just a collection of random molecules. It's an information processing system. Think about how did lifeless chemicals become a self-replicating, error-correcting, biological operating system? That's the real origin of life problem, the evolution problem, abiogenesis. It's not can one molecule join with another. Abiogenesis has never been proved. It's never been done in a lab. It's how did long-living chemicals become the self-regulating complex code of life without a programmer? Think about this deeply.
Protein
This
synthesis
is
is
the
the
factory
process by
analogy.
which the body
Think
creates
about the
proteins.
complexity of what is
Proteins
happening.
consist
What's
of
actually
chains
happening
of
here?
amino acids.
We have
Which
storage
amino
medium
acids
DNA,
used
a
and their
transcription
sequence
translation
determines
system
each
that
particular
reads the
protein.
code, and the
The assembly
biomachinery
of
that
amino
carries
acids
out the
into
instructions.
proteins takes place in cells. The first stage,
First stage
transcription,
is
occurs in the
transcription,
nucleus. The second stage, translation, occurs
translation,
in the cytoplasm. Transcription is the process of converting instructions for assembling a protein
converting instructions.
located in the cell's DNA into messenger RNA. The template for building messenger RNA is a genetic sequence along a section of the DNA strand. Each strand of DNA contains nucleotides with
Nucleotides.
complementary bases. Adenine pairs with thymine and cytosine with guanine. To start transcription, an enzyme called RNA polymerase attaches to the beginning of the DNA template. A sequence of 3 DNA bases, called a base triplet, contains information for assembling each amino acid of a protein.
Information.
RNA polymerase reads the base triplets to
Reads
build
the base
messenger
triplets.
RNA using free nucleotides. Corresponding messenger RNA triplets are called codons. In mRNA codons, uracil replaces thymine.
Codons because it's coded information.
Once the mRNA is built, certain enzymes remove introns, or sections that will not be used to build the protein. Enzymes splice the remaining ends, or exons, together. Then the functional mRNA leaves the nucleus. Translation is the process of using messenger RNA to assemble amino acids into a protein. The structure that will read the mRNA, called a ribosome, attaches to the mRNA strand. Initiated by a start codon, the ribosome reads each subsequent codon, which signals a transfer RNA molecule that has the matching anticodon sequence and specific amino acid. The process continues as additional transfer RNA molecules attach, bringing the correct amino acids to build the protein until the protein is completely assembled, signaled by the stop codon. After the assembled protein breaks away from the ribosome, its subunits detach from the mRNA.
So we have start codons, we have anticodons, we have stop codons. This is like finding a fully automated factory where the instruction manual builds the machines, but the machines are the only things capable of reading the manual. Now, this is very important. DNA contains the instructions to make proteins, but you need proteins to make, read, copy, and repair DNA. You can't have one without the other. So what came first? This is the probability war. Critics, evolutionists, they say, oh, evolution can explain all of this complexity because it happened over millions and millions of years. But random mutations and natural selection could only work after you have a living system that can reproduce. It cannot explain the origin of the system it requires to function. Look at the math. A modest protein of 150 amino acids has roughly 10 to the power of 195 possible arrangements. To put that into perspective, there are only about 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the entire observable universe. It would be interesting for anyone to check out the sensible scientists, like there's one there, Douglas Axe, on the probabilities, because sensible scientists can look at this and say, there's no way this happened by evolution. So on my YouTube channel, I have a video, What Do Sensible Scientists Say? And anyone can go to the science of this and look at the sensible answers and not the evolutionary just so stories. Finding one functional protein by blind chance is like trying to find one specific atom in a billion trillion universes. This is the design inference, the conclusion, the only possible conclusion. In every other area of human experience, code points to a coder, a book points to an author, software points to a programmer, And we infer design because we know what DNA is and what DNA is doing. It's an integrated biological operating system. If complex functional code always come from a mind in every other case, why would the most complex code in the universe be the only exception?
It's been called one of the wonders of the molecular world, an amazing nanoscale machine. ATP synthase is a high-tech micromolecular power generator inside the cells of your body. It generates adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, an energy molecule that provides fuel that every one of your cells needs to function. Without this fuel, your cells will cease operation, and so will you. ATP synthase works like a rotary engine. The barrel-shaped rotator is composed of 10 to 15 protein parts called subunits. The rotator spins around, transmitting mechanical energy into the drive shaft of the machine, which helps make ATP. This drive shaft has a specially placed bump that opens and closes parts as the drive shaft spins around. This bump opens special protein subunits on the bottom of the machine. When the bottom subunits open, a spent energy molecule called adenosine diphosphate, or ADP, enters the machine. The mechanical motion causes the ADP to bind with an additional phosphate group, creating the ATP energy molecule. And the ATP drifts off into the cell, ready to power some biomechanical reaction. The ATP synthase machine has many parts we recognize from human-designed technology: a rotor, a stator, a drive shaft, and other basic components of a rotary engine. The ATP synthase is one of thousands of elegantly designed molecular machines inside your cells that make your life and all known life possible. ATP synthase, an example of intelligent design.
This is impossible to evolved. It's engineered, it's designed, there had to be forethought. It couldn't evolve by random chance mutations and natural selection. And the more we discover about DNA, it is definitely not random chance. It is obvious that it is planned, designed engineering. Before evolution, there must be life. And before life, there must be specific information. Evolution, absolutely no chance.
For the molecular motors that drive bacteria through liquid, each depend upon a system of intricately arranged mechanical parts. These parts come into focus when portions of a cell are magnified 50,000 times. Biochemists have used electron micrographs like this one to identify the parts and three-dimensional structure of the flagellar motor. In the process, they have revealed a marvel of engineering on a miniaturized scale.
Howard Berg at Harvard has labeled it the most efficient machine in the universe. These machines, some of them are running at 100,000 RPMs and are hardwired into a signal transduction or sensory mechanism so that it's getting feedback from the environment.
So the bacteria flagellum has a clutch. And when it's swimming, the clutch is engaged. And when it needs to stop, it disengages the clutch. This is phenomenal engineering. And these little bacteria, they know where to go, where to swim to, and what to do when they get there, because they've got all that information in the DNA. And they're made of proteins, but if you take one protein away, it won't work. And it has to have all the instructions to build the thing in the first place. So all molecular motors are irreducibly complex because you can't take one bit away, otherwise it just will not work. It cannot evolve.
Meet the Kinesin. Masterpieces of microengineering, Kinesins are miniature motorized machines that carry cargo from one part of the cell to another, walking along self-assembling highways called microtubules. Known as the workhorses of the cell, Kinesins have 2 feet, or globular heads, that literally walk 1 foot over another along the microtubule, pulling their cargo to its destination.
Like it or not, this was all supernaturally, divinely created in the very beginning. A lot of people don't like the idea of that, but unfortunately it's true. And our life, the life we live, is because it was supernaturally, divinely created in the beginning. Now, one of the astonishing facts of the matter is one single typical diploid human cell contains approximately 6.4 billion base pairs of DNA. That's just in one cell, which translates to roughly 1.5 gigabytes of digital data. Digital data is information, and that's what makes all the life that we see on this planet. The average human adult contains between 30 trillion and 37 trillion human cells. And based on those numbers, the average human adult contains approximately 45 zettabytes. That's 45 billion terabytes of DNA digital data. To put this astronomical scale into perspective, 45 zettabytes is roughly half the total digital data that's created, captured, copied, watched, and consumed globally across the entire internet in a single year. There's lots of science about this, and you can go to it and find it if you're really interested. But if you don't want a God, you're not going to look for it, are you? Life does not need only one protein. A living cell and all life needs many, many proteins. It needs DNA, it needs RNA, it needs membranes, it needs energy management, it needs replication, it needs translation, it needs error correction, it needs molecular machines that work together. This is why the phrase life arose by evolutionary random chance is absolutely not good enough. The same DNA in your one's little cell can help produce a nerve cell, a skin cell, a liver cell, a tooth forming cell, all our bones, depending on which parts are activated, where they are activated, and when they are activated. So life is not only genetic code, it is timed code, it is regulated code, it's spatially organized code, and it's code operating on 3-dimensional space and through time. In living cells, DNA is folded, it's packaged, it's looped, opened, closed, regulated, and read at the right time in the right place. So we have, little babies and we grow through to adults. That is the timing of the DNA, which tells it what stage it's in and what happens next. In other words, life is not just a book. It is a book, a factory, a control system, a repair system, a timing system, and an execution system all bound together. Now, in Origin of the Species, written by Charles Darwin in the 1850s, and this was the first edition, on page 154, he wrote, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, then my theory would absolutely break down. but I can find no such case. That's what he wrote in his book, his first edition. But he didn't know about DNA, did he? He didn't have a clue. He didn't know about the complexity of the cell. We know that the complexity of the cell, just one cell, is more complex than the space station. He didn't know about molecular motors. No, he just looked at things, around and thought, oh, well, that's just been developed a little bit better than the thing that came before it, like from apes to humans. Well, shh, don't tell my disciples what the ENCODE program has discovered in the observed and tested empirical research of the biogenome and the undeniable information complexity of DNA. Darwin didn't like the idea of the eye. It really bothered him because he knew how complex it was. He didn't like a peacock. He didn't like it because he couldn't explain it. Well, I think if Darwin was alive today and he saw all the information coming out of the genome program, the ENCODE program, he would know that life is too complex and that his theory does not work. In the New Testament, in the Bible, it says in Romans chapter 1, verse 20, for ever since the creation of the world, his invisible nature and attributes, that is, his eternal power and divinity, have been made intelligible and clearly discernible in and through things that have been made. That's his handiworks. So men are without excuse, altogether without any defense or justification. There are lots of writings in the Bible about God's power and divinity and creation. There's one, Psalm 19, verses 1 to 4, as an example. But we see all this beautiful life, don't we? And it's just amazing. We've got so much beauty and wonderful complexity on this planet. Now, there it says, for ever since the creation of the world, his invisible nature and attributes. Well, we can't see DNA, can we? And not with our eyes. We can see it through microscopes, but this is what it's talking about here, is invisible nature and attributes. And the Bible has so much in it but people just don't read it because they just think, oh, we've all evolved. We don't need to read the Bible. We don't need a God. But there's so much in the Bible. If you read it, you would understand that we have a creator and he's left us the Bible to help us in our life, and it has promises of salvation. So to summarize, the chemistry of biological life is far too complex to happen by random mutations and natural selection. The first life could not have evolved by abiogenesis. The origin of life research it had now died a silent death. You've only got to look at the work of James Tour and how he challenged all the origin of life top researchers, and they are completely silent. They're saying nothing. DNA codes for proteins. Proteins make DNA. You cannot have one without the other. They are symbiotic. It all had to happen in the beginning when God created. The only sensible logical explanation is a supernatural divine programmer. Information and programming can only come from a mind. DNA creates all the beautiful, colourful life that we can and we do see all over the world, in everything, all the mammals, the birds, the fishes. It's amazing. DNA is the most intricate digitally coded system on this planet. So, my next video will be part 2. So thanks for watching. Part 2 is coming soon, and it will be about the complexity in the trees, plants and feathered birds. I know a lot of people that just say, oh no, the feathers, they've all come by chance. All these creatures all come by chance. Well, let's look at it deeply in the next video. So why would evolution do colourful beauty? Well, it doesn't. So, Darwin, shh, shh, shh. I don't want to hear anymore. There's so many chicken and egg problems. It's unbelievable. But people just don't want to look at it. They just live their life and just think, it's fine, life's fine. But I like to thank God for my life because I know without God I wouldn't exist. So I'll say bye for now and see you soon in the next video.